Everyone's talking. Everyone's reacting. Everyone's screaming their emotions into the void, desperate to be heard. And you're about to learn why the smartest thing you can do is the opposite. This isn't about being passive. This isn't about weakness. This is about understanding that silence is a weapon, and the moment you master emotional restraint, you stop being controlled by everything around you. You become the calm in everyone else's storm. You become untouchable. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Needing to Respond. You've been lied to your entire life. Not by anyone in particular. By your own nervous system. By the ancient wiring in your brain that screams at you every time someone provokes you, insults you, challenges you. It tells you that you must respond. That silence is weakness. That if you don't defend yourself immediately, you've lost something. But here's the truth. The opposite is real. The person who reacts first doesn't win. They lose. Every single time. Let me be clear about something. Most of your reactions aren't necessary. They're automatic. Your brain has been trained, through millions of years of evolution, to treat every threat as if it's life or death. A saber-toothed tiger charging at you? React immediately or die. That made sense then. But now, someone sends you a passive-aggressive text. Someone questions your competence in a meeting. Someone posts something about you online. And your body responds the exact same way. Heart racing. Adrenaline surging. The overwhelming urge to do something. To say something. To prove them wrong. But that text isn't a tiger. That comment isn't a threat to your survival. Your brain just can't tell the difference. It confuses urgency with importance. And because of that confusion, you react. You type out that angry response. You fire back in the heat of the moment. You defend yourself before you've even thought about whether defending yourself matters. And in doing so, you hand your power to whoever provoked you. You don't owe anyone an immediate response. Read that again. You don't owe anyone an immediate response. Not your boss. Not your ex. Not the stranger on the internet who doesn't even know you. The belief that you must respond, right now, immediately, defensively, is the illusion. And it's costing you more than you realize. Think about a poker player. A professional. They sit at the table, cards in hand, and their face reveals nothing. They don't flinch when the stakes get raised. They don't react when someone bluffs. They observe. They calculate. They wait. And because they never reveal their hand, they control the entire table. Now think about the amateur. Every good card gets a smile. Every bad card gets a grimace. Every raise gets a visible reaction. They're not playing poker, they're being played. The same dynamic exists in your life. Every time you react immediately, you're the amateur. You're showing your hand. You're giving away control. Silence is not surrender, it's strategy. This is the key. When you withhold your reaction, you're not being passive. You're not avoiding confrontation. You're making a calculated decision. You're choosing not to give your emotional energy to something or someone that doesn't deserve it. And that choice, that's power. Real power. Not the false power of getting the last word. Not the hollow satisfaction of winning an argument. The deep, unshakable power of being in complete control of yourself. Here's what I want you to do right now. Think about the last time someone provoked you. Maybe it was yesterday. Maybe it was this morning. Picture that moment. Feel that surge of anger or defensiveness rising in your chest. Now ask yourself this. Did your immediate reaction improve the situation? Did it solve anything? Or did it just make you feel temporarily justified while ultimately changing nothing? Be honest with yourself. Because most of the time, the reaction you thought was so necessary accomplished absolutely nothing except draining your energy and validating their provocation. The reaction you withhold today becomes the power you wield tomorrow. Every time you pause instead of react, you're building something. You're training your nervous system. You're rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself that you are not a slave to your impulses. And over time, weeks, months, years, that training compounds. You become someone who cannot be provoked. Someone who cannot be manipulated. Someone who moves through the world with a quiet, unshakable composure that others can feel but can't explain. Let me give you a concrete example. You receive a text. It's insulting. It's unfair. It's designed to get under your skin. Your first instinct is to respond immediately, to defend yourself, to set the record straight. But what if you don't? What if you read it, feel the anger, and then put your phone down? What if you wait 24 hours before deciding whether it even deserves a response? Here's what happens. The emotional charge dissipates. The urgency fades. And you realize that most of the time, silence is the most powerful response you could give. Not because you're afraid, but because you've decided that person doesn't get access to your emotional state. Think about a mountain. A storm rolls in. Wind howls. Rain pounds. Lightning strikes. And the mountain, it doesn't respond. It doesn't fight back. It doesn't justify its existence. It simply stands, unmoved, unchanged. The storm exhausts itself and moves on, and the mountain remains. That's what you're becoming. Not cold, not unfeeling, but unmoved by the storms that others try to create around you. Here's the difficult truth. Most people are addicted to reacting. They're addicted to the feeling of being heard, of being right, of defending themselves. And that addiction keeps them weak. It keeps them controlled by external circumstances. It keeps them dancing to someone else's rhythm. You're choosing to be different. You're choosing to break that addiction. And that choice, that discipline, is what separates people who are controlled by their emotions from people who control their emotions. The person who reacts first loses control. The person who pauses owns the moment. This is not a metaphor. This is a law. In negotiations, the person who speaks first after a silence loses leverage. In arguments, the person who stays calm while the other person escalates wins the respect of everyone watching. In life, the person who can sit with discomfort, with provocation, with a desperate urge to react, and choose not to, that person is free. Everyone else is a puppet. So here's your practice. For the next 7 days, implement the 10-second rule. Before you respond to anything that triggers you, a text, a comment, a criticism, count to 10. Slowly. Breathe. Feel the urge to react. Watch it like you're watching a wave. Don't suppress it. Don't fight it. Just observe it. And then, after those 10 seconds, decide whether responding serves you. Not whether you're right. Not whether they deserve to hear your side. Whether responding actually improves your life in any meaningful way. Most of the time, you'll realize it doesn't. You don't owe anyone an immediate response. Silence is not surrender, it's strategy. The reaction you withhold today becomes the power you wield tomorrow. These aren't just phrases. They're principles. And if you internalize them, if you live them, you will become someone that others cannot shake, cannot manipulate, cannot control. You've learned the first truth, that most reactions are unnecessary. You've learned that the urge to respond is often just ancient brain wiring mistaking social discomfort for mortal danger. And you've learned that silence is not weakness, it's conscious, strategic power. But understanding this intellectually is not enough. Now you need to understand why your silence affects others so profoundly. Why it intimidates them. Why it exposes them. There's something you need to understand about human nature. Most people are desperate. Desperate to be seen. Desperate to be validated. Desperate to know that their words, their actions, their existence matters. And they measure that mattering by the reactions they get from others. When you give them that reaction, when you argue back, defend yourself, show emotion, you're feeding that desperation. You're confirming that they have power over you. But when you don't react, when you meet their provocation with silence, you rob them of that confirmation. And it terrifies them. Your silence is their mirror. When someone throws words at you, criticism, insults, manipulation, and you don't respond, something happens in their psychology. They're forced to sit with their own behavior. They're forced to hear their own voice echoing back at them in the void of your non-response. And most people can't handle that. Because when you don't react, they can't distract themselves with your anger. They can't focus on your defensiveness. They have to confront the uncomfortable truth that maybe, just maybe, their words meant nothing. That they're screaming into a space that doesn't care. And that realization shakes weak people to their core. Let me be direct. Weak-minded people need your reaction to feel powerful. They throw provocations like fishermen cast lines, hoping for a bite. When you bite, when you engage, argue, defend, they've caught you. They now control your emotional state. They've proven to themselves that they matter because they were able to affect you. But when you don't bite, when the line sits in the water with nothing on it, they're left holding a rod with no purpose, wondering why their usual tactics aren't working. And that confusion quickly turns to frustration, then anger, then desperation. Here's what this looks like in real life. You're in a meeting. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment about your work. Everyone's watching. The old you would have defended yourself immediately, explained, justified, proven them wrong. But the new you simply look at them. No expression, no emotion, and you say nothing. Or you calmly acknowledge it without engaging, noted. And you move on. Watch what happens. That person will often escalate. They'll push harder. Make another comment. Try to pull you into the fight. Because your silence just revealed something to everyone in that room. They're trying too hard. They need the reaction. And you don't need to give it. When you stop reacting, they stop controlling. That's the key. Control is what this is really about. Manipulative people, whether they're conscious of it or not, use emotional provocation as a control mechanism. They've learned that if they can make you angry, defensive, or hurt, they can steer your behavior. They can make you dance. But the moment you become unmoved by their tactics, you've taken the control back. You're no longer dancing. You're standing still. And that stillness exposes them for exactly what they are. Someone trying desperately to move someone who will not be moved. Composure is dominance. Not dominance in the toxic, aggressive sense. Dominance in the psychological sense. When you remain calm while others are losing control, you become the gravitational center of the interaction. People instinctively sense who has mastery over themselves and who doesn't. The person yelling, frantically defending, emotionally spiraling, they're broadcasting weakness. The person sitting quietly, unmoved, observing, they're broadcasting strength. And here's what most people won't tell you. That strength intimidates insecure people because it highlights their own lack of self-control. Think about your own life. Who intimidates you? Is it the person who argues loudest? The one who always has to be right? Or is it the person who says very little, who doesn't feel the need to explain themselves, who seems completely unbothered by what others think? It's the second one. Always. Because that person has something you can't take from them. They have themselves. They're not performing for anyone. They're not seeking validation. They're simply present, composed, and internally complete. And that kind of presence is magnetic and terrifying in equal measure. Here's your practice. Pay attention to who gets uncomfortable with your silence. When you stop engaging with certain people, when you stop defending yourself, stop explaining, stop reacting, watch who becomes agitated. Who starts accusing you of being cold or distant. Who escalates their provocations. Who suddenly needs to know what you're thinking. Those people are revealing something crucial. They were using your reactions to regulate their own emotional state. Your anger made them feel powerful. Your defensiveness made them feel superior. Your engagement gave them purpose. And now that you've withdrawn those things, they're forced to face their own emptiness. Your silence forces others to confront their own insecurity. This is the psychological mechanism at work. Secure people don't need your reaction. They can state their perspective and move on, whether you engage or not. They're not invested in controlling your emotional response. But insecure people, they need the engagement. They need the back and forth. They need the drama because it distracts them from their own internal chaos. When you deny them that distraction through your silence, they're left alone with themselves. And that's the last place they want to be. Let me give you another example. Someone posts something about you on social media. It's inaccurate. It's unfair. It's designed to make you look bad. Every instinct tells you to respond publicly, to set the record straight, to defend your reputation. But what if you don't? What if you let it sit there, uncommented, unaddressed? Here's what happens. People who know you won't believe it. People who don't know you don't matter. And the person who posted it. They're left broadcasting their own pettiness to an audience that's now watching them, not you. Your silence shifted the spotlight. They thought they were exposing you, but your non-reaction exposed them. When you stop reacting, they stop controlling. This bears repeating because it's the foundation of everything we're building here. Every reaction you give is a transfer of power. Every emotion you display in response to someone else's provocation is you handing them the remote control to your inner state. They press a button, criticism, and you react with defensiveness. They press another button, insult, and you react with anger. You've become predictable, controllable. But the moment you stop reacting, you take the remote control back. You're no longer responding to their inputs. You're operating from your own internal programming. And that shift is what transforms you from someone who can be manipulated to someone who cannot. Composure is dominance. But in nature, the alpha doesn't need to prove itself constantly. It doesn't bark the loudest or fight the most. It simply carries itself with a quiet certainty that others recognize and respect. You're not trying to dominate others. You're trying to dominate yourself, to master your own reactions. And that self-mastery naturally creates a presence that others find both compelling and, for the insecure, intimidating. Here's what I want you to understand deeply. Your silence isn't mean. It isn't cruel. It isn't cold. It's protective. You're protecting your peace from people who would disturb it. You're protecting your energy from people who would drain it. You're protecting your mental space from people who don't deserve access to it. And the fact that this protection makes some people uncomfortable is not your problem. Their discomfort with your boundaries is information about them, not about you. So practice this. The next time someone tries to provoke you, in person, online, through text, pause. Feel the urge to respond rising in your chest. And instead of acting on it, get curious. Ask yourself, why do they need my reaction? What does my engagement give them? And what do I lose by giving it? Most of the time, you'll realize that your silence is the most powerful statement you can make. Not because you're afraid to engage, but because you've determined that engagement serves them, not you. Your silence is their mirror. When you stop reacting, they stop controlling. Composure is dominance. These aren't just words. They're weapons. Use them. Internalize them. Let them become so much a part of you that your silence becomes instinctive, not effortful. And watch how your world changes. Watch how manipulative people either change their behavior around you or remove themselves from your life entirely. Both outcomes serve you. You've learned why your silence unsettles weak people. You've learned that your composure exposes their chaos, and that your refusal to react strips them of the control they thought they had. But understanding the psychology of silence isn't enough. You need to understand the mechanics, the neuroscience, the actual biological processes that make you react before you think. Because if you don't understand the machine, you can't master it. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not less disciplined than you think you should be. What you are is human. And your human brain has a design flaw. A feature that was once essential for survival but now sabotages almost every important decision you make. It's called the amygdala, and it's hijacking your life every single day without you even realizing it. Here's how it works. Someone insults you. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Someone questions your competence. And within milliseconds, before you even consciously register what's happening, your amygdala fires. This almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in your brain detects a threat and immediately triggers your fight-or-flight response. Heart rate spikes. Blood pressure rises. Stress hormones flood your system. Your rational mind, the prefrontal cortex that handles logic, planning, and self-control, gets bypassed entirely. You're not thinking anymore. You're reacting. And by the time your conscious mind catches up, you've already said something you regret. Already sent that text. Already escalated the situation. This is emotional hijacking. And it happens to you dozens of times a day. The problem isn't that you lack willpower. The problem is that your ancient survival system is treating a critical email the same way it would treat a predator. Your brain can't tell the difference between a physical threat and a social one, between a saber-toothed tiger and a passive-aggressive coworker. So it responds to both with the same biological urgency: react now, think later. And that's why you keep losing control in moments that matter. Between the trigger and the reaction, there's a space. Own that space. This is everything. This is the entire game. Your amygdala fires automatically. You can't stop that. It's hardwired. But what you can control is what happens in the split second after. That tiny gap between the trigger and your response. That's where your power lives. That's where freedom exists. And the only way to expand that gap is through practice. Deliberate, uncomfortable, repetitive practice. Let me give you a real example. You're driving. Someone cuts you off aggressively, nearly causing an accident. Your amygdala fires instantly. Rage floods your system. Your hands tighten on the wheel. You want to honk, chase them down, flip them off, scream. Every cell in your body is screaming for you to react. And here's the critical moment. You have about 3 seconds before that reaction becomes automatic. 3 seconds where you can intervene, where you can take 3 deep breaths, where you can consciously activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the brake pedal for your stress response. If you do that, the intensity drops. The rage doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip. And you drive on, still annoyed but in control. If you don't, you spend the next hour furious, replaying the incident, ruining your own mood over someone who's already forgotten you exist. You're not controlling emotions, you're controlling your response to them. This distinction is critical. A lot of people think emotional mastery means not feeling things, suppressing anger, numbing fear, becoming robotic. That's not what this is. You will feel anger. You will feel fear, frustration, hurt. That's not optional. You're human. But what is optional is whether you let those feelings dictate your behavior. The emotion is the weather. Your response is the house. Bad weather doesn't have to destroy the house if the house is built well. Here's the neuroscience. Your amygdala evolved millions of years ago when threats were simple and immediate. A rustling in the bushes could be a predator. Delay your reaction for even a moment and you're dead. So your ancestors who had the fastest, most automatic fear responses survived and passed on their genes. You inherited that system. It kept humans alive for millennia. But now, most of the threats you face aren't physical. They're social, psychological, reputational, and they don't require an immediate physical response. In fact, an immediate response usually makes things worse. But your amygdala doesn't know that. It's still operating like you're on the savannah being stalked by lions. Neural pathways follow repetition. Practice restraint, become restraint. Every time you react automatically, you strengthen that neural pathway. You make it easier for your brain to default to reaction next time. It's like walking through a field. The first time, there's no path. But if you walk the same route every day, eventually you create a worn trail. That trail becomes the path of least resistance. Your brain does the same thing. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you choose calm over chaos, you're creating a new neural pathway. And with enough repetition, that pathway becomes the default. Restraint stops being something you force yourself to do. It becomes who you are. Let me break down what actually happens in your brain during emotional hijacking. The amygdala receives sensory information, sight, sound, tone of voice, and scans it for threats. This happens unconsciously, about 5 times faster than your conscious mind can process. When it detects a threat, it sends a distress signal to your hypothalamus. Your hypothalamus activates your sympathetic nervous system. Adrenaline dumps into your bloodstream. Your pupils dilate. Your breathing gets shallow. Blood flow redirects from your digestive system to your muscles, preparing you to fight or run. And here's the key part. The prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, gets deprioritized. Blood flow decreases there. Your capacity for logic, empathy, and long-term thinking literally diminishes. You're now operating from your primitive brain. The part that kept your ancestors alive, but makes you say things in arguments you'll regret for years. Between the trigger and the reaction, there's a space. Own that space. I'm repeating this because it's the single most important concept in this entire audiobook. That space is where transformation happens, and you expand it through one simple practice: the breath. When you feel that surge of anger, fear, or defensiveness rising, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. That's your sympathetic nervous system activating. But you can consciously override it. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. This isn't mystical. This is physiology. Deep breathing activates your vagus nerve, which signals your parasympathetic nervous system to engage. Heart rate slows. Blood pressure drops. The prefrontal cortex comes back online. You're no longer hijacked. You're back in the driver's seat. Here's your practice. For the next week, set a timer on your phone for random intervals throughout the day. When it goes off, stop whatever you're doing and take 3 conscious breaths. That's it. You're not trying to be calm. You're not trying to meditate. You're simply training your nervous system to respond to your intentional breathing. You're building the muscle. Because when the real moment comes, when someone provokes you, when you feel that rage or hurt rising, your body will have a trained response. The breath won't be something you have to remember to do. It'll be instinctive. You're not controlling emotions, you're controlling your response to them. Let's apply this practically. You get a text from someone that makes your blood boil. Maybe it's unfair. Maybe it's insulting. Maybe it's manipulative. Your amygdala fires. You feel the heat in your chest. Your fingers are already moving toward your phone to type a response. This is the moment. Stop. Put the phone face down. Stand up. Walk to another room if you can. And breathe. 3 deep breaths. Feel the intensity. Don't fight it. Don't suppress it. Just observe it like you're a scientist studying a specimen. Interesting. This is what rage feels like in my body. Tight chest. Clenched jaw. Rapid thoughts. After 60 seconds, the peak intensity will start to drop. After 5 minutes, you'll have perspective. After an hour, you'll realize that responding in that initial moment would have accomplished nothing except giving them exactly what they wanted. Proof that they got to you. Neural pathways follow repetition. Practice restraint, become restraint. This is the compounding effect I'm talking about. One pause doesn't transform you. One deep breath doesn't rewire your brain. But 1,000 pauses, 1,000 moments where you chose control over reaction, that changes your neurology. That changes your identity. You become someone who, when faced with provocation, doesn't even feel the urge to react anymore. Not because you're suppressing it, but because your default setting has changed. Your brain has learned that pausing serves you better than reacting ever did. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. You will fail at this. Repeatedly. You'll have moments where you react before you think, where you say something you regret, where you let your amygdala drive the car straight into a wall. That's part of the process. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be better than you were yesterday. And every time you fail and then consciously choose to practice restraint the next time, you're reinforcing the new pathway. The old trail in the field doesn't disappear overnight. But if you stop walking it and start walking the new route, eventually the old path grows over. It becomes harder to find. And the new path becomes the only way through. Between the trigger and the reaction, there's a space. Own that space. You're not controlling emotions, you're controlling your response to them. Neural pathways follow repetition. Practice restraint, become restraint. These are your anchors. Memorize them. When you feel hijacked, when you feel that primitive brain taking over, repeat these phrases to yourself. They're not just motivational. They're neurological truth. And truth, practiced consistently, becomes power. You've learned the biology of why you react. You've learned that your brain is running ancient software that doesn't match your modern problems. And you've learned that the solution isn't to change your emotions, it's to change what you do with them. But knowing this intellectually is useless if you don't know how to apply it where it matters most. In conflict. In the heat of the moment. When someone is pushing every button you have and your entire body is screaming at you to fight back. Most people think they're good at conflict. They're not. They're good at escalation. They're good at getting louder. They're good at making sure they're heard. But actual conflict resolution? Most people have no idea what that looks like. Because real mastery in conflict isn't about winning the argument. It's about controlling the outcome. And the fastest way to control any outcome is to stop participating in the chaos. To go silent while everyone else is screaming. Arguments escalate for one reason: both parties need to be heard. That's it. Someone says something. You disagree. You respond. They respond to your response. You respond to that. And now you're not even arguing about the original issue anymore. You're arguing about tone. About respect. About who said what 3 years ago. The argument has taken on a life of its own, and both of you are feeding it. But here's what nobody tells you. The person who stops talking first doesn't lose. They win. Because they've stopped giving the fire oxygen. And without oxygen, the fire dies. Strategic silence isn't avoidance. Let me be crystal clear about this because people confuse these constantly. Avoidance is running from conflict because you're afraid. Strategic silence is choosing not to engage because you've assessed that engagement doesn't serve you. Avoidance is fear-based. Strategic silence is power-based. One makes you smaller. The other makes you untouchable. And the difference is entirely in your intention. When you stay silent because you're scared of confrontation, people feel it. When you stay silent because you've decided this conversation is beneath you, people feel that too. And they back down. Control the reaction, control the outcome. This is the fundamental law of conflict. Whoever remains calm controls the direction of the interaction. Think about the last argument you had. Maybe with a partner, a family member, a colleague. Who was calmer? And who ultimately steered where the conversation went? It wasn't the person yelling. It wasn't the person frantically defending themselves. It was the person who maintained composure. Because composure creates a gravitational pull. It forces the other person to either match your energy or exhaust themselves trying to provoke you. Either way, you're in control. Here's how this plays out practically. You're in a relationship argument. Your partner is upset. They're raising their voice. Making accusations. Bringing up past issues. Everything in you wants to defend yourself. To correct the record. To explain why they're wrong. But what if you don't? What if you let them finish? What if you stay completely silent for 30 seconds after they're done? Not silent in a hostile way. Not the silent treatment. Just genuinely silent. Present. Listening. What happens? 9 times out of 10, they soften. Because your silence created space for them to hear themselves. To realize maybe they escalated too quickly. To feel the weight of their own words without your defensiveness to bounce them off of. Your silence is their discomfort. Let them sit in it. This is advanced conflict psychology. When someone is attacking you, criticizing you, trying to provoke you, they're expecting resistance. They're prepared for you to fight back. That's what they're braced for. But when you give them nothing, when you receive their words without reacting, they're suddenly sitting in the discomfort of their own aggression. And most people can't tolerate that for long. They'll either apologize, soften their approach, or reveal their true manipulative intent by escalating further. Either outcome gives you information. Either outcome puts you in the power position. Let me give you another example. You're at work. A colleague publicly criticizes your project in a meeting. Everyone's watching. Your face gets hot. Your heart races. Every instinct tells you to defend your work right now. To explain your reasoning. To point out the flaws in their criticism. But instead, you pause. You look at them calmly. And you say, "I'll consider that feedback." And you move on. No defensiveness. No explanation. No emotional display. What just happened? You robbed them of the confrontation they were seeking. You made their criticism look petty because you didn't validate it with a defensive response. And everyone in that room now sees composure from you and neediness from them. Don't fight every battle you're invited to. This is crucial. Some people will try to drag you into conflict constantly. It's how they regulate their own emotional state. They create drama because chaos makes them feel alive. And if you engage every time, you're not being strong. You're being predictable. You're letting them set the terms of your day. Strategic silence means looking at a potential argument and consciously deciding it's not worth your energy. Not because you can't win, but because winning would cost you more than losing. It would cost you peace, time, mental space, and those resources are finite. Here's the practice. Next time someone tries to start an argument with you, don't debate whether you're right. You probably are. Don't think about whether you can win. You probably can. Instead, ask yourself one question. Will engaging in this improve my life in any meaningful way? Not, am I justified in being angry? Not, do I have valid points to make? Will this specific engagement, with this specific person, at this specific moment, make your life better? If the answer is no, stay silent. Say nothing. Or say, I'm not having this conversation right now. And walk away. Your dignity intact. Your energy preserved. Control the reaction, control the outcome. Let's talk about negotiation for a moment because the principles are identical. Professional negotiators know that silence is one of the most powerful tools in their arsenal. You make an offer. The other party counters. And instead of immediately responding, you just sit there. Silent. Looking at them. The discomfort builds. Most people can't tolerate silence for more than 15 seconds. They start filling it. They start justifying their position. They start making concessions before you've said a word. Why? Because your silence created a void, and their nervousness filled it. You didn't argue them down. You just refused to play, and they negotiated against themselves. The same thing happens in personal conflicts. Someone accuses you of something. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you pause. You let the accusation hang in the air. And you calmly ask, why do you think that? No defensiveness. Just curiosity. Watch what happens. They either have to back up their accusation with specifics, which often reveals it's based on assumption, not fact, or they have to admit they don't actually know. Your silence shifted the burden of proof. They made the claim. Your refusal to react made them responsible for supporting it. Your silence is their discomfort. Let them sit in it. I want you to really internalize this. Most people are terrified of uncomfortable silence. They'll do anything to avoid it. They'll apologize when they shouldn't. They'll fill the space with words that weaken their position. They'll reveal information they didn't need to share. But you're learning to be comfortable in the discomfort. To sit in the tension without needing to resolve it immediately. And that ability makes you formidable in any conflict. Because while they're squirming, you're observing. While they're talking, you're thinking. While they're reacting, you're strategizing. Here's what this looks like in a heated moment. Someone's yelling at you. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're wrong. Doesn't matter. They're emotionally dysregulated, and you're not. Don't match their energy. Don't try to out-yell them. Don't defend yourself while they're still escalating. Just stand there. Or sit there. Calm. Present. Let them exhaust themselves. Because here's the thing about emotional storms. They run out of fuel. Nobody can sustain peak anger for more than a few minutes. If you don't add fuel by reacting, the fire burns itself out. And when it does, when they've said everything they need to say, then, and only then, you respond. Calmly, briefly, and with complete control. Don't fight every battle you're invited to. Some conflicts are tests. People are testing to see if they can control you, if they can get you to react, if they can pull you into their chaos. And every time you engage with that kind of provocation, you're failing the test. You're proving that you can be manipulated. But when you look at a clear attempt to provoke you and you just don't respond, when you acknowledge it with a calm, okay, or don't acknowledge it at all, you've passed. You've shown that you can't be baited. And people respect that on a deep, often unconscious level. Even if they don't like it. Control the reaction, control the outcome. Think about the people you respect most. Are they the ones who always have to have the last word? Who argue about everything? Who can't let anything go? Or are they the ones who pick their battles carefully? Who can let comments slide without it affecting their composure? who seem unbothered by things that would send most people into a spiral. It's always the second group. Always. Because restraint signals strength. Reactivity signals weakness. And deep down, everyone knows this. Here's your challenge. The next argument you're about to have, and you know one's coming, try this. Decide beforehand that you're going to speak 50% less than you normally would. Not because you don't have things to say, but because you're practicing strategic silence. Let the other person talk. Really talk. Don't interrupt. Don't defend. Don't correct. Just listen. And when there's a pause, instead of filling it immediately, wait 5 seconds. Count them in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then respond, if you even need to. You'll be shocked at how often the conflict resolves itself simply because you stopped feeding it. Your silence is their discomfort. Let them sit in it. Don't fight every battle you're invited to. Control the reaction, control the outcome. These aren't just strategies. They're a new operating system. And like any new system, it feels strange at first. Unnatural. Your old programming wants you to engage, defend, explain. But that old programming kept you exhausted. Kept you in constant conflict. Kept you controlled by whoever knew which buttons to push. This new way, it makes you unreachable, unshakable, free. You've learned how to use silence as a strategic tool in conflict. You've learned that staying calm doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're in control. You've learned that not every battle deserves your energy. But there's a specific arena where this gets exponentially harder. Where the urge to react is almost irresistible. Where silence feels impossible because thousands of people might be watching. I'm talking about the place that's destroyed more composure than any face-to-face argument ever could. Your phone buzzes. Someone tagged you. Someone commented on your post. Someone screenshot something you said and twisted it out of context. And before you even finish reading it, your heart rate increases. Your jaw clenches. Your fingers are already hovering over the keyboard, crafting a response. You tell yourself you're just setting the record straight. Just defending yourself. Just making sure people know the truth. But here's what's really happening. You're being manipulated by a system specifically designed to exploit your psychological vulnerabilities. And every time you respond, you're feeding the machine that's consuming your peace. Social media platforms are not neutral spaces. They're psychological warfare dressed up as connection. Every notification, every like, every comment is a calculated dopamine hit. These platforms were engineered, literally engineered by some of the smartest behavioral psychologists and neurologists in the world, to keep you engaged, to keep you scrolling, to keep you reacting. Because your engagement is their profit. Your attention is their product. And they've spent billions of dollars figuring out exactly which psychological buttons to push to keep you addicted. And one of the most powerful buttons, your need to respond when you feel attacked. Not everything deserves your energy. Read that again. Not everything deserves your energy. But social media convinces you otherwise. It creates an illusion of urgency. Someone says something wrong about you at 2 p.m., and if you don't respond by 2:05, it feels like the lie becomes truth. Like your silence is admission. Like everyone watching will believe the worst unless you immediately defend yourself. But that feeling, that's not reality. That's the platform's algorithm exploiting your amygdala. Creating artificial urgency where none exists. Making you feel like you must respond right now when the truth is, you don't need to respond at all. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. You see a notification. Your brain releases a small amount of dopamine in anticipation. Will this be positive or negative? You open it. It's negative. An insult. A criticism. A misrepresentation. Now your amygdala fires. Threat detected. Your stress response activates. But here's the key difference between online and in-person conflict. There's no physical resolution. In person, a confrontation ends. People walk away. The tension dissipates. Online, it never ends. You respond. They respond to your response. Someone else jumps in. Now you're responding to multiple people. The thread grows. The notifications keep coming. and you're trapped in a loop of reactivity that can continue for hours, days, or weeks. You're not defending yourself. You're drowning yourself. Your absence of reaction is a complete sentence. This is one of the most liberating truths you'll ever internalize. When someone attacks you online, your silence is not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's a full, complete, powerful response. It says, "This doesn't deserve my energy." It says, "I'm not playing this game." It says, "You don't get access to my emotional state." And here's what most people don't realize. Your silence makes a louder statement than any paragraph-long defense ever could. Because defense implies the attack had merit. Silence implies the attack was so irrelevant it didn't even register. Let me give you a real example. Someone posts something false about you. It spreads. People are commenting, sharing. Everyone's watching to see what you'll say. The old you would have written a detailed response. Screenshots. Receipts. A point-by-point breakdown of why they're wrong. But what actually happens when you do that? You've now made the false claim more visible. You've given it legitimacy by treating it as if it deserved a response. You've kept the conversation alive. And most importantly, you've shown that person they can control your behavior. They threw the bait. You bit. Now they know exactly how to get to you next time. Let them scream into the void. You're not the void. Here's the alternative approach. You see the post. You feel the anger. You feel the urge to respond. And you don't. You simply let it exist without your participation. And here's what happens. People who know you won't believe it. People who don't know you don't matter. And the person who posted it is left performing to an audience that moves on to the next thing within 24 hours. Meanwhile, you went about your day. You protected your peace. You refused to give them the reaction they were hunting for. And you demonstrated to everyone watching that you're someone who can't be baited into public spectacle. The attention economy is real. Your reaction is the currency. Every time you engage with negativity online, you're paying attention. And attention is the most valuable resource in the digital age. Companies know this. Influencers know this. And trolls know this. They've figured out that the easiest way to get attention is to say something provocative about someone who has an audience. They don't actually care about the topic. They care about the engagement, the views, the shares. And when you respond, you give them exactly what they want. You've just increased their reach, given them relevance, made them part of your story when they should have been completely irrelevant to it. Not everything deserves your energy. Let's talk about comment sections. Someone leaves a hateful comment on your post. It's personal. It's cruel. It's designed to hurt. Every fiber of your being wants to respond, to defend yourself, to call them out. But pause for a moment. Who is this person? Do you know them? Do they matter to your life in any tangible way? Are they an expert in what you're discussing? Or are they a stranger who's projecting their own misery onto you? The answer is almost always the latter. And you're considering giving hours of your mental energy to someone whose opinion wouldn't matter to you for even a second if you met them in person. Here's the practice. Before you respond to anything online, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Will responding improve this situation? 2. Am I responding from a place of strength or a place of defensiveness? 3. Will I care about this interaction in a week? If you can't answer yes to the first, yes to the second, and yes to the third, don't respond. Just don't. Delete the notification. Close the app. Do literally anything else. Because that interaction is a trap. It's designed to consume your time and emotional energy. And the only winning move is not to play. Your absence of reaction is a complete sentence. I want to talk about the ratio phenomenon because it perfectly illustrates this principle. When someone gets ratioed on social media, it means the negative responses to their post outnumber the likes. It's a digital form of public humiliation. And you know who gets ratioed most? The person frantically defending themselves in the comments. The person arguing with every critic. The person who can't let it go. Because their desperation to be right makes them look wrong. Meanwhile, the person who posts something and never checks the comments? Who doesn't engage with the negativity at all? They're untouchable. Their absence makes them look confident. Their silence makes them look secure. Even if they're not. Let them scream into the void, "You're not the void." Here's what nobody tells you about online conflict. It's performative. Nobody's actually trying to change your mind or have a genuine discussion. They're performing for their audience. Trying to look smart. Trying to look righteous. Trying to get likes and validation. And when you engage, you're not having a conversation. You're giving them a stage. You're the co-star in their performance. And the more emotionally you respond, the better they look to their audience. You're literally helping them at your own expense. The attention economy is real. Your reaction is the currency. Think about the most successful people you follow online. The ones with real influence. Real respect. How often do they argue in comment sections? How often do they defend themselves against critics? How often do they engage with obvious bait? Almost never. Not because they don't see it. Not because they're above it. But because they understand that their attention is valuable. They understand that engaging with negativity is a losing game. They understand that their silence is more powerful than any response could be. Here's the truth about social media that will set you free. Your feed is not real life. The people commenting aren't a representative sample of reality. They're the small percentage of people bored or angry enough to engage in conflict with strangers. The vast majority of people are silent observers. They're watching. They're scrolling. But they're not participating. And when you engage in public arguments, those silent observers aren't thinking about who's right. They're thinking about who looks desperate, who looks emotionally unhinged, who looks like they need validation. And it's always the person who can't stop responding. Not everything deserves your energy. Let me give you a concrete example of how powerful strategic silence is online. A public figure gets accused of something. 2 paths forward. Path 1, immediate detailed response. Addressing every point. Providing evidence. Getting defensive. Result: the story stays alive for weeks. Every response generates new articles, new commentary. The story mutates and spreads. Path 2, brief statement, if any, then silence. No engagement with follow-up questions. No defensiveness. Result: the story dies in 48 hours because there's nothing to fuel it. The absence of reaction starved the fire. This happens over and over, yet people keep choosing path 1. Why? Because restraint feels passive. But it's actually the most active, strategic choice you can make. Your absence of reaction is a complete sentence. Here's your challenge for the next 7 days. Don't engage with a single negative comment, message, or post directed at you. Not one. You can read them if you want. You can feel the emotions they bring up. But don't respond. Don't explain. Don't defend. Just observe what happens. I'll tell you what happens. Nothing. The earth keeps spinning. People move on. And you realize that all those times you thought you had to respond, you didn't. The urgency was manufactured. The stakes were inflated. And your peace was sacrificed for absolutely nothing in return. Let them scream into the void, "You're not the void." The attention economy is real. Your reaction is the currency. Not everything deserves your energy. These are your shields against the most psychologically manipulative environment humans have ever created. Because that's what social media is. It's not a neutral platform. It's a system optimized to keep you reactive, defensive, and addicted. And the only way to win is to stop participating in the parts that drain you. To use it as a tool when it serves you and to ignore it completely when it doesn't. You've learned why social media makes silence harder than any other arena. You've learned that platforms are literally engineered to exploit your need to respond. You've learned that your absence of reaction is the most powerful statement you can make online. But understanding these tactical applications of silence isn't enough. Because there's a deeper question we haven't addressed yet. A question that determines whether you're practicing strategic restraint or just avoiding conflict out of fear. And that question is this: what's the difference between power and passivity? There's a version of silence that makes you smaller. And there's a version that makes you unshakable. Most people can't tell the difference. They see someone who doesn't react and they assume weakness. They see someone who walks away from conflict and they think coward. But they're wrong. Because there's a universe of difference between someone who stays silent because they're afraid and someone who stays silent because they've decided you're not worth their energy. One is passive. One is powerful. And if you don't know which one you're practicing, you're lying to yourself. Passivity is fear-based inaction. Let's be brutally honest about what this looks like. You don't respond because you're terrified of confrontation. You stay quiet because you're afraid of what might happen if you speak up. You avoid conflict because the discomfort of engagement feels unbearable. Your silence isn't a choice, it's a surrender. You're not controlling the situation. The situation is controlling you. And everyone can feel it. The person provoking you knows you're scared. The people watching know you're scared. And worst of all, you know you're scared. That's passivity. That's weakness disguised as restraint. Restraint is power-based choice. This is completely different. You don't respond because you've assessed the situation and determined that engagement doesn't serve you. You stay quiet because you've decided your energy is too valuable to waste on this person or this conflict. You avoid the argument not because you can't handle it, but because you've run the calculation and realized that winning would cost more than it's worth. Your silence is deliberate, strategic, coming from a place of confidence, not insecurity. You're not afraid of confrontation. You're just uninterested in this particular one. That's restraint. That's power. Restraint is conscious. Passivity is unconscious. Here's how you know which one you're practicing. Passive people feel relief when conflict is avoided. They exhale. They're grateful it's over. Their nervous system was flooded with fear, and now it's subsiding. Restrained people feel calm throughout. Before, during, and after. They're not relieved because they were never afraid. They made a conscious decision not to engage, and they're at peace with that decision. There's no second-guessing. No wondering if they should have said something. Just clarity and composure. If you're constantly questioning whether you should have spoken up, you're probably being passive. If you're certain your silence was the right move, you're practicing restraint. Let me give you a concrete example. You're in a meeting. Someone takes credit for your work. Passive response. You say nothing because you're afraid of looking petty or creating tension. You sit there, stomach churning, replaying what you should have said. For days, you're angry at yourself for not speaking up. That's passivity. Restrained response. You note what happened, assess that this person isn't worth engaging with in the moment, and decide to address it privately with your manager later or simply let your work speak for itself going forward. You're not afraid. You're strategic. You've chosen the battlefield and the timing. That's restraint. You're not avoiding, you're choosing. This distinction is everything. Avoiders run from difficulty. They change the subject when things get uncomfortable. They leave the room when tension rises. They ghost people instead of having hard conversations. And they tell themselves they're being mature, being the bigger person, practicing restraint. But they're lying to themselves. Because their body knows the truth. Their cortisol levels know. Their sleep quality knows. You can't avoid your way to peace. You can only choose your way to it. And choosing requires conscious decision-making, not reflexive escape. Here's the test. Ask yourself, if this person continued this behavior tomorrow, would I be okay with that? If someone disrespects you and you stay silent, and they do it again next week, and you're furious but still say nothing, that's passivity. You're accepting treatment you don't want because you're afraid of the confrontation. But if someone disrespects you, you stay silent in that moment because it's not the right time or place, and then you address it on your terms later, or you simply remove that person from your life without drama. That's restraint. You've taken action. Just not the action they expected. Just not the action your fear was pushing you toward. Silence from strength looks different than silence from fear. Know which one you're practicing. People can sense this difference even if they can't articulate it. When someone stays quiet out of fear, their body language betrays them. They avoid eye contact. They make themselves smaller. They have nervous energy. Their silence screams discomfort. But when someone stays quiet from strength, they maintain eye contact. They're relaxed. They're present. Their silence is calm and deliberate. It doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like a decision. And that distinction changes everything about how the interaction plays out. Let me tell you about the lion principle. A lion doesn't respond to the barking of smaller animals. Not because it can't. Not because it's afraid. But because it has nothing to prove. Its power is self-evident. It doesn't need to demonstrate dominance to creatures that pose no real threat. That's restraint from strength. Now imagine a lion that hears barking and runs away, hiding because it doesn't want confrontation. That's not restraint. That's an impossible scenario because lions don't operate that way. But humans do. Humans with all the capability of the lion often behave like prey animals, running from confrontation not because they're strategic, but because they're scared. Restraint is conscious. Passivity is unconscious. Let's apply this to personal relationships. Your partner says something hurtful. Passive response. You shut down. You give them the silent treatment. Not because you've decided that's the best approach, but because you don't know what else to do. You're overwhelmed. You're hurt. And silence is your default when you're in pain. Days go by. Nothing gets resolved. Resentment builds. That's passivity destroying your relationship. Restrained response. You hear the hurtful comment, you feel the pain, and you consciously decide, I'm not responding to this right now because we're both too emotional. We'll talk about this tomorrow when we're calm. And then you do. That's restraint building your relationship. You're not avoiding, you're choosing. The key word is agency. Do you feel like you have a choice in your silence? Or does silence feel like the only option because everything else terrifies you? Passive people feel trapped by their silence. Like they're locked in a cage they didn't build but can't escape. Restrained people feel empowered by their silence. Like they're holding a key they can use whenever they choose, but right now, staying locked in serves them better. One is a prison. One is a strategic position. Make sure you know which one you're in. Here's a personal inventory you need to do. Think about the last 5 times you stayed silent in a situation that bothered you. For each one, answer honestly. Was I silent because I was afraid of the consequences? Or was I silent because I determined engagement wouldn't serve me? Was my silence reactive or responsive? Did I feel powerless or powerful? Did I regret my silence afterward or feel at peace with it? Your answers will reveal whether you're practicing restraint or hiding behind passivity. And if you're hiding, that's okay. Awareness is the first step. You can't change a pattern you won't acknowledge. Silence from strength looks different than silence from fear. Know which one you're practicing. Here's what restraint actually feels like in your body. When you choose not to respond from a place of strength, you feel grounded. Your breathing is steady. Your heart rate is normal. You might feel the emotion, anger, frustration, hurt, but you're not consumed by it. You're observing it. You're holding it. And you're making a clear decision about what to do with it. There's no panic. No frantic mental replay of what you should say. Just calm assessment and deliberate choice. Contrast that with passivity. When you don't respond from fear, your body is in stress mode. Your breathing is shallow. Your heart is racing. You're flooded with what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. You're not choosing silence. Silence is choosing you because every other option feels too terrifying. And after the moment passes, you're exhausted. Replaying it endlessly. Beating yourself up for not standing up for yourself. That's your body telling you the truth your mind is trying to avoid. You weren't being strategic. You were being scared. Restraint is conscious. Passivity is unconscious. You're not avoiding, you're choosing. Silence from strength looks different than silence from fear. Know which one you're practicing. These aren't just phrases. They're diagnostic tools. Every time you stay silent, run these phrases through your mind. Check in with your body. Check in with your motivation. Are you making a conscious choice from a place of power? Or are you unconsciously reacting from a place of fear? The difference determines whether your silence is building you up or breaking you down. Here's the practice. For the next week, every time you choose silence, write down why. Not what you told yourself in the moment. Not the story you want to believe. The real reason. I didn't respond because I was afraid they'd get angry. I didn't speak up because I didn't want people to think I was difficult. I stayed quiet because confrontation makes me anxious. Write the truth. And then ask, is this the person I want to be? Is this silence serving my growth or my fear? Because the person you're becoming is determined by which version of silence you practice most. And you can't become powerful by repeatedly choosing the passive path. The goal isn't to never feel fear. The goal is to not let fear make your decisions. You can feel afraid and still choose restraint over passivity. You can notice the anxiety and still make a conscious, strategic choice. The difference is in the decision-making process. Passive people let their emotions drive. Restrained people feel their emotions but keep their hands on the wheel. One is being swept along by internal weather. The other is navigating through it with intention and direction. Silence from strength looks different than silence from fear. Know which one you're practicing. I need you to be honest with yourself about this. Because if you're using the language of restraint to justify passivity, you're not protecting yourself. You're imprisoning yourself. You're teaching people how to treat you. You're building a life where your voice doesn't matter because you've decided, unconsciously, that using it is too risky. And that's not wisdom. That's not maturity. That's fear running your life while wearing the mask of self-control. But here's the good news. Even if you've been passive for years, you can become restrained starting right now. It's a practice. Every time you consciously choose silence from strength instead of unconsciously defaulting to it from fear, you're rewiring yourself. You're becoming someone different. Someone who owns their silence instead of hiding behind it. Someone who uses restraint as a weapon instead of wearing passivity as armor. And that transformation changes everything. You've learned the difference between running from conflict and strategically stepping away from it. You've learned that true restraint comes from confidence, not cowardice. You've learned how to diagnose which version you're practicing. But even when you master restraint, even when your silence is genuinely powerful, there's a risk. A subtle trap that catches even people who've done this work. Because restraint without humanity becomes coldness. And coldness isn't strength. It's just another form of emotional avoidance. There's a dangerous place people end up when they master emotional restraint. They become so good at not reacting that they stop feeling altogether. They build walls so thick that nothing gets through, not the bad, but not the good either. They confuse detachment with disconnection. They think emotional control means emotional shutdown. And they wake up one day wondering why their relationships feel empty, why nothing moves them anymore, why they become a ghost in their own life. This is not mastery. This is numbness. And if you're not careful, it's exactly where restraint will take you. Emotional restraint doesn't mean suppressing feelings. Let me be absolutely clear about this because this misunderstanding destroys people. Restraint is not about not feeling anger when someone wrongs you. It's not about not feeling hurt when someone betrays you. It's not about becoming a robot who processes experiences without emotional response. That's not evolution. That's dissociation. Restraint means feeling everything, the full intensity of your emotions, but not allowing those feelings to dictate your behavior. You feel the anger. You just don't act on it impulsively. You feel the hurt. You just don't let it make your decisions. Feel it, don't feed it. This is the distinction that changes everything. Your emotions are data. They're information about what matters to you, what threatens you, what you value. When someone disrespects you and you feel anger, that anger is telling you something important. Your boundaries were crossed. That's valuable information. But if you feed that anger by ruminating on it, replaying the incident, imagining revenge scenarios, letting it consume your thoughts for hours, you're not processing the emotion. You're amplifying it. You're taking useful data and turning it into destructive noise. Here's what healthy emotional detachment looks like. Someone criticizes you unfairly. You feel the sting. Your chest tightens. There's a flash of anger or hurt. You acknowledge it. I'm feeling defensive right now. That criticism bothered me. And then you ask yourself, is this criticism accurate? Even partially. If yes, what can I learn from it? If no, why am I giving it weight? You're not suppressing the emotion. You're observing it, processing it, learning from it. and then letting it pass through you instead of setting up residence inside you. The emotion came. It delivered its message. And you released it. You can be emotionally present without being emotionally reactive. This is advanced emotional intelligence. Most people think you're either emotional or you're logical. Either you feel things deeply or you're cold and analytical. But that's a false choice. The most emotionally mature people feel things deeply and respond to them wisely. They're present with their emotions without being controlled by them. They can sit with someone who's hurting and feel genuine empathy without taking on that hurt as their own. They can be in conflict and feel anger without letting that anger escalate the situation. Presence without reactivity. That's the goal. Let me give you an example. You're a parent. Your child does something dangerous. You feel fear and anger simultaneously. Fear because they could have been hurt, anger because they knew better. Reactive parent yells, says hurtful things, disciplines from a place of emotional overwhelm. The child learns that love comes with volatility. Detached parent feels the fear and anger but takes 3 breaths before responding. Explains calmly why the behavior was dangerous. Sets clear consequences without rage. The child learns that boundaries and love coexist. Same emotions. Completely different outcomes. One fed the emotion. One felt it and channeled it into something constructive. Detachment isn't disconnection, it's self-preservation. People confuse these constantly. Disconnection is, I don't feel anything anymore because I've shut down. Detachment is, I feel things, but I don't let them destroy me. Disconnection is numbing yourself to avoid pain. Detachment is allowing yourself to feel pain without letting it define you. Disconnection makes you unavailable to life. Detachment makes you available to life without being overwhelmed by it. One is closing the door. One is installing a screen. Things can pass through, but only what you consciously allow in. Here's the real-world application. You're in a relationship that's ending. The person you loved is leaving. Disconnected response, I don't care. People leave. Whatever. You've shut down completely. You won't let yourself grieve. You pretend you're fine when you're falling apart inside. This leads to unprocessed trauma that will sabotage your next relationship. Detached response, this hurts. I loved this person. I'm sad this is ending. And I'm going to feel this sadness fully. But I'm not going to beg them to stay. I'm not going to make desperate decisions from this pain. I'm going to honor my feelings and still honor myself. That's detachment. You're fully feeling without losing yourself in the feeling. Feel it, don't feed it. Let's talk about grief for a moment because it's the ultimate test of this principle. When you lose someone, through death, through breakup, through betrayal, you have 2 choices. You can feel the grief and let it move through you. Cry when you need to cry. Sit with the sadness when it comes. Talk about it when you need to process it. But not dwell in it. Not make it your identity. Not feed it by constantly reliving the loss. That's feeling it. Or you can feed it. Make the grief your entire personality. Tell the story of your loss to everyone. Refuse to have a single day that isn't colored by it. Turn it into who you are instead of something you're experiencing. One honors the loss. One becomes the loss. You can be emotionally present without being emotionally reactive. Think about a therapist for a moment. A good therapist listens to traumatic stories all day. Stories of abuse, loss, despair. And they're present for all of it. They feel genuine empathy. They're emotionally engaged with their clients. But they don't go home and fall apart. They don't take on their client's trauma as their own. They maintain what's called professional detachment. They're with the person in their pain without drowning in it themselves. That's not coldness. That's emotional mastery. And you can develop that same capacity in your own life. Here's the practice. Next time you feel a strong emotion, anger, sadness, anxiety, try this. Sit with it for 5 minutes without doing anything. Don't act on it. Don't suppress it. Don't distract yourself from it. Just feel it. Notice where it lives in your body. Is your chest tight? Is your stomach churning? Is your jaw clenched? Breathe into those sensations. And as you do this, Name what you're feeling out loud or in your head. I'm feeling angry right now. My anger is telling me I feel disrespected. That's valid. Now, what do I want to do with this information? You're not feeding the anger by raging or ruminating. You're processing it. And processing creates release. Detachment isn't disconnection, it's self-preservation. The ocean is the perfect metaphor for this. On the surface, waves crash. Storms rage. Things are chaotic and turbulent. But go deep enough, and there's stillness. Calm. The ocean doesn't stop being the ocean just because the surface is rough. And you don't stop being human just because you're not reacting to every emotional wave that hits you. Your depth, your core self, can remain still while your surface experiences temporary turbulence. That's detachment. You're not denying the waves exist. You're just not letting them disturb your foundation. Here's what people get wrong. They think if you're not constantly expressing your emotions, you're repressing them. That's not true. Expression and reactivity are different. You can express how you feel without being controlled by how you feel. I'm hurt by what you said is expression. Crying for days, refusing to speak to the person, spiraling into self-pity, that's reactivity. I'm angry about this situation is expression. Yelling, breaking things, saying cruel things you don't mean, that's reactivity. Healthy people express. Unhealthy people react. And the difference is everything. Feel it, don't feed it. I need to address something important here. Some of you reading this have learned to shut down your emotions because expressing them wasn't safe growing up. Maybe your parents punished you for crying. Maybe vulnerability was used against you. Maybe you learned that feelings were dangerous. If that's you, detachment isn't your problem. Disconnection is. And the path forward isn't learning to feel less, it's learning to feel safely. To trust that your emotions won't destroy you. That's different work. That's not about restraint. That's about reconnection. And it's just as important. You can be emotionally present without being emotionally reactive. Here's how this shows up in high-stakes situations. You get devastating news. A diagnosis. A betrayal. A massive failure. The reactive person falls apart immediately. They let the emotion consume them so completely that they can't function. They can't think. They can't plan. They're drowning. The disconnected person shuts down. Goes numb. Pretends it's not happening. Functions on autopilot but isn't actually processing anything. The detached person? They feel the full weight of the devastation. They let themselves cry if they need to. They sit with the shock. But then they ask, what do I need to do now? Who can help me? What's my next right step? They're fully feeling and fully functional. That's mastery. Detachment isn't disconnection, it's self-preservation. Think about the people in your life who you respect most in crisis. Are they the ones who collapse? Who panic? Who become completely dysfunctional? No. It's the people who stay calm while acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Who feel their fear but don't let it paralyze them. Who honor their emotions but don't let emotions make their decisions. That's who you're becoming. Not someone who doesn't feel. Someone who feels everything but isn't ruled by any of it. Here's your challenge. For the next week, practice the 5-minute rule. When you feel a strong emotion, give yourself 5 minutes to just be with it before you do anything. Don't react. Don't suppress. Just sit with it. Breathe. Feel where it is in your body. Name it. And after 5 minutes, decide consciously what to do. Most of the time, you'll find that the urgency has passed. The intensity has decreased. And you can respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. You'll be amazed at how much power you reclaim by simply inserting that gap between feeling and action. Feel it, don't feed it. You can be emotionally present without being emotionally reactive. Detachment isn't disconnection, it's self-preservation. These principles protect you from becoming cold while you're learning to be calm. From becoming distant while you're learning to be detached. From losing your humanity while you're mastering your emotions. Because the goal was never to stop being human. The goal was to stop being controlled. To feel deeply but respond wisely. To love fully but not desperately. To care without attachment to outcome. That's emotional freedom. You've learned that detachment doesn't mean becoming emotionally dead. It means feeling everything without being consumed by anything. You've learned that true strength includes vulnerability, not the rejection of it. But understanding these concepts intellectually doesn't make them automatic. You need to train yourself, to build the habit, to rewire your default response from reactivity to restraint. And there's one practice that makes all of this possible. One simple tool that, used consistently, will transform your entire emotional life. Storms rage. Things are chaotic and turbulent. But go deep enough, and there's stillness. Calm. The ocean doesn't stop being the ocean just because the surface is rough. And you don't stop being human just because you're not reacting to every emotional wave that hits you. Your depth, your core self, can remain still while your surface experiences temporary turbulence. That's detachment. You're not denying the waves exist. You're just not letting them disturb your foundation. Here's what people get wrong. They think if you're not constantly expressing your emotions, you're repressing them. That's not true. Expression and reactivity are different. You can express how you feel without being controlled by how you feel. "I'm hurt by what you said" is expression. Crying for days, refusing to speak to the person, spiraling into self-pity, that's reactivity. "I'm angry about this situation" is expression. Yelling, breaking things, saying cruel things you don't mean, that's reactivity. Healthy people express. Unhealthy people react. And the difference is everything. Feel it, don't feed it. I need to address something important here. Some of you reading this have learned to shut down your emotions because expressing them wasn't safe growing up. Maybe your parents punished you for crying. Maybe vulnerability was used against you. Maybe you learned that feelings were dangerous. If that's you, detachment isn't your problem. Disconnection is. And the path forward isn't learning to feel less, it's learning to feel safely. To trust that your emotions won't destroy you. That's different work. That's not about restraint. That's about reconnection. And it's just as important. You can be emotionally present without being emotionally reactive. Here's how this shows up in high-stakes situations. You get devastating news. A diagnosis. A betrayal. A massive failure. The reactive person falls apart immediately. They let the emotion consume them so completely that they can't function. They can't think. They can't plan. They're drowning. The disconnected person shuts down. Goes numb. Pretends it's not happening. Functions on autopilot but isn't actually processing anything. The detached person? They feel the full weight of the devastation. They let themselves cry if they need to. They sit with the shock. But then they ask, "What do I need to do now? Who can help me? What's my next right step?" They're fully feeling and fully functional. That's mastery. Detachment isn't disconnection, it's self-preservation. Think about the people in your life who you respect most in crisis. Are they the ones who collapse? Who panic? Who become completely dysfunctional? No. It's the people who stay calm while acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Who feel their fear but don't let it paralyze them. Who honor their emotions but don't let emotions make their decisions. That's who you're becoming. Not someone who doesn't feel. Someone who feels everything but isn't ruled by any of it. Here's your challenge. For the next week, practice the 5-minute rule. When you feel a strong emotion, give yourself 5 minutes to just be with it before you do anything. Don't react. Don't suppress. Just sit with it. Breathe. Feel where it is in your body. Name it. And after 5 minutes, decide consciously what to do. Most of the time, you'll find that the urgency has passed. The intensity has decreased. And you can respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. You'll be amazed at how much power you reclaim by simply inserting that gap between feeling and action. Feel it, don't feed it. You can be emotionally present without being emotionally reactive. Detachment isn't disconnection, it's self-preservation. These principles protect you from becoming cold while you're learning to be calm. From becoming distant while you're learning to be detached. From losing your humanity while you're mastering your emotions. Because the goal was never to stop being human. The goal was to stop being controlled. To feel deeply but respond wisely. To love fully but not desperately. To care without attachment to outcome. That's emotional freedom. You've learned that detachment doesn't mean becoming emotionally dead. It means feeling everything without being consumed by anything. You've learned that true strength includes vulnerability, not the rejection of it. But understanding these concepts intellectually doesn't make them automatic. You need to train yourself, to build the habit, to rewire your default response from reactivity to restraint. And there's one practice that makes all of this possible. One simple tool that, used consistently, will transform your entire emotional life. The pause is where power lives. I want to address something important. Some of you are thinking, but what if it's an emergency? What if I need to react quickly? Here's the truth. Actual emergencies are rare. A physical threat requires immediate action. A child in danger requires immediate action. But someone insulting you? Not an emergency. Someone challenging your opinion? Not an emergency. Your partner criticizing you? Not an emergency. Your brain labels these things as emergencies because of the emotional intensity, but they're not. And responding to non-emergencies as if they're emergencies is why your life feels constantly chaotic. The pause helps you distinguish between what's actually urgent and what just feels urgent. 10 seconds changes everything. Here's what this looks like in a long-term relationship. Your partner says something hurtful. Not abusive. Just hurtful in the way people who know you well can sometimes be. Old pattern. Immediate defensive reaction. How could you say that? You always do this. I can't believe you. The fight escalates. You both say things you regret. The issue doesn't get resolved. New pattern with the pause. They say the hurtful thing. You feel the sting. You take a breath. Count to 10 in your head. Then you say, that hurt. I need a minute before we continue this conversation. You walk into another room. Not storming off. Just physically creating space. You take a few more breaths. The intensity drops. You return. When you said that, it made me feel. You've addressed the issue without the explosion. That's the pause changing the entire trajectory of the conflict. Practice the pause until the pause becomes you. The compounding effect of this practice is extraordinary. The first 100 times you pause, it feels forced, unnatural, like you're fighting against yourself. But around the 100th time, something shifts. The pause starts to feel normal. Around the 500th time, it starts to feel automatic. And after thousands of pauses, spread over months and years, you realize you've become a different person. You're someone who doesn't react impulsively, who doesn't say things they regret, who doesn't make decisions from emotional overwhelm. Not because you're trying so hard, but because you've trained yourself to pause until the pause became you. Here's the practice for the next 30 days. Every single time you're about to respond to something that has any emotional charge, doesn't matter how small, pause for 10 seconds first. Set a timer if you need to. Make it non-negotiable. You're not pausing only when you remember or only when it's convenient. You're pausing every single time. This is deliberate practice. This is how you build the habit so deep that it becomes reflexive. And yes, people will notice. They'll ask why you're being quiet. Just say, I'm thinking about what you said. Or, I want to give you a thoughtful response. Nobody can argue with that. The pause is where power lives. 10 seconds changes everything. Practice the pause until the pause becomes you. These are not suggestions. These are the 3 most important practices in this entire audiobook. Because everything else we've discussed, the psychology, the strategy, the philosophy, all of it requires you to have access to your rational mind in emotional moments. And the only way to guarantee that access is through the pause. The pause is the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. And you build that bridge one 10-second interval at a time. Here's what you'll notice after practicing this for a month. Your relationships will improve. Not because you're saying the right things more often, but because you're saying the wrong things less often. Your stress will decrease. Not because your life got easier, but because you stopped reacting to every provocation. Your self-respect will grow. Not because you're winning more arguments, but because you're maintaining your composure in situations that used to destabilize you. The pause doesn't just change your responses. It changes your entire experience of being alive. Practice the pause until the pause becomes you. That's the goal. Not pausing because you're supposed to. Not pausing because you read it in a book. Pausing because it's who you are now. Because your nervous system has been so thoroughly retrained that your default response to triggers is no longer reactivity. It's a breath, a moment, a choice. And from that choice, you respond instead of react. You build instead of destroy. You grow instead of spiral. That's what the pause gives you. That's what 10 seconds can do. Everything. You've learned the most practical tool for emotional mastery, the pause. You've learned how to create space between stimulus and response. You've learned that this practice, repeated consistently, rewires your entire nervous system. But there's still a deeper question we haven't fully answered. Because even with all this training, even with perfect emotional control, life will still challenge you. People will still hurt you. Situations will still demand your response. And at some point, you need to know, when is silence not just strategic, but essential? When is your refusal to explain yourself the only dignified path forward? There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that some people will never understand them, never believe them, never give them the benefit of the doubt. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can exhaust yourself trying to make them see. You can explain, defend, justify, provide evidence, plead your case. Or you can accept a hard truth. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Some situations don't require your words. Some accusations don't deserve your defense. And some people will never respect you no matter what you say. For them, your silence is the only response that matters. Not everyone deserves an explanation. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn because it goes against everything you've been taught. You've been conditioned to believe that if you just explain yourself clearly enough, people will understand. If you just provide enough evidence, people will believe you. If you just defend yourself effectively enough, people will see the truth. But that's a fantasy. Because understanding requires willingness. And some people are not willing. They've already decided what they think. They've already made up their minds. And your explanation isn't going to change that. It's just going to drain you. Your silence is a complete answer. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. Someone accuses you of something you didn't do. Maybe publicly. Maybe privately. The accusation is false, and you know it's false, and you have proof it's false. Every instinct in your body screams to defend yourself, to show the receipts, to set the record straight. But pause. Ask yourself, who is this person? Do they actually care about the truth? Or have they already decided you're guilty and they're just looking for your reaction? Because if it's the second one, and it usually is, your explanation will be twisted. Your evidence will be dismissed. Your defense will be used against you. And you'll have given your power to someone who was never going to believe you anyway. Here's the principle. Defend yourself to those who are willing to hear you. Stay silent with those who've already made up their minds. This is strategic silence at its most powerful. Because your energy is finite. Your emotional bandwidth is limited. And wasting either on people who are determined to misunderstand you is not wisdom. It's self-destruction. You're not staying silent because you can't defend yourself. You're staying silent because you refuse to participate in a trial where the verdict was decided before you entered the room. Protect your peace. Say nothing. I'm going to tell you about a concept called the false accusation trap. Someone makes a false claim about you. You defend yourself. They twist your defense. You defend against the twist. They add another accusation. You defend that. And now you're in an endless loop where you're constantly defending, and they're constantly attacking, and the original truth has been buried under layers of back and forth. This is the trap. And the only way to avoid it is to never enter it in the first place. To look at the initial accusation and decide, this doesn't deserve my engagement. And walk away. Let me give you a concrete example. You're accused of being cold or uncaring by someone who has repeatedly violated your boundaries. They want a response. They want you to explain yourself, to prove you do care. to demonstrate your warmth. But here's what's really happening. They're trying to manipulate you back into a dynamic that wasn't serving you. Your coldness is actually just healthy boundaries. Your lack of care is actually just self-preservation. And explaining this to them is pointless because they benefit from you not having boundaries. Your silence, your refusal to justify your boundaries, is the only response that protects you. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Think about the people in your life who consistently misunderstand you, who interpret your actions in the worst possible light, who question your motives, who doubt your character. You've probably tried explaining yourself to them dozens of times. How has that worked? Has a single explanation ever changed their perspective? Or do they just find new things to misunderstand? If it's the latter, you're not dealing with confusion. You're dealing with someone who is committed to their narrative about you. And no amount of explanation will change a committed narrative. Your silence is a complete answer. Here's what this sounds like when you practice it. Someone texts you, "I can't believe you did that. What were you thinking?" Old response, a long paragraph explaining your reasoning, justifying your decision, trying to make them understand. New response, nothing. Or if you feel you must respond, "I'm comfortable with my decision." That's it. 3 seconds to type. No justification. No defense. Just a simple statement that you've made a choice and you're at peace with it. Their approval is not required. Their understanding is not necessary. Your peace is non-negotiable. Protect your peace. Say nothing. Let's talk about what happens when you practice this. Initially, people will push harder. They'll send follow-up messages. "Did you see my text? Why aren't you responding? I deserve an explanation." This is them testing whether your silence is real or if they can pressure you back into the old pattern. This is the critical moment. If you break and explain yourself, you've taught them that your boundaries aren't real, that they just need to push harder and you'll cave. But if you maintain the silence, if you continue to refuse engagement, they'll eventually stop. Because your silence has communicated something more powerful than any words could, you are not available for this conversation. Here's the Gandhi principle. Speak only if it improves upon the silence. Before you respond to anything, especially accusations, criticism, or demands for explanation, ask yourself, will my words improve this situation? Will they lead to understanding, resolution, or peace? Or will they just prolong conflict, create more misunderstanding, and drain my energy? Most of the time, the honest answer is the latter. Most of the time, your words will be used against you. Misinterpreted. Twisted. So most of the time, silence is not just the strategic choice. It's the only choice that serves you. Not everyone deserves an explanation. I need to address something important. Some of you are thinking, but what about my close relationships? My partner? My family? Don't they deserve explanations? Yes. Absolutely. The people who love you, who are invested in understanding you, who approach you with good faith, they deserve your communication. They deserve your explanations. This chapter is not about them. This chapter is about the other people. The ones who consistently prove they're not interested in understanding. Who use your explanations as ammunition. Who demand justifications they'll never accept. Those people, they get your silence. Your silence is a complete answer. Here's a powerful reframe. When you stay silent in the face of accusations or demands for explanation, you're not being rude. You're not being avoidant. You're making a statement, I don't need to justify my existence, my choices, or my boundaries to you. That's a complete sentence. That's a full answer. Your silence is you saying, your opinion of me is not my responsibility. And that's not arrogance. That's self-respect. Because people who respect you don't require constant justification. They trust you. They give you the benefit of the doubt. And they don't demand explanations for decisions that don't concern them. Protect your peace. Say nothing. Let me tell you about the aftermath. After you've practiced strategic silence for a while, something interesting happens. The people who were demanding explanations either leave your life or they adjust their behavior. The ones who leave, they were never meant to stay. They were in your life because you tolerated their disrespect. Because you kept explaining yourself, which implicitly suggested their approval mattered. When you stop explaining, they have no role. And they leave. The ones who stay, they learn that you have boundaries, that you're not going to dance for their approval. And often, they respect you more because of it. Here's the practice. For the next 7 days, do not explain yourself to anyone who hasn't earned that explanation. If someone criticizes you and you know they're not interested in understanding, say nothing. If someone demands to know why you made a choice that doesn't affect them, I'm comfortable with my decision. If someone tries to make you justify your boundaries, silence. Just 7 days. See what happens. See how much energy you conserve. See how much peace you protect. See how many people reveal that they were only in your life because you were willing to constantly perform for their approval. Not everyone deserves an explanation. There's a specific situation where this is crucial: false accusations. When someone accuses you of something false, your instinct is to immediately clear your name, to prove your innocence, to make sure everyone knows the truth. But here's what often happens: your defense keeps the accusation alive. It keeps people talking about it. It gives the accusation more attention and legitimacy than it ever deserved. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to dignify it with a response, the accusation often dies from lack of engagement. Because most false accusations can't survive without your participation in the drama. Your silence is a complete answer. Think about public figures who've mastered this. When someone attacks them publicly, the ones who maintain their composure and say nothing or very little, they come out stronger. Their silence communicates confidence. It says, "That accusation is so beneath me that I won't even address it." Compare that to the public figures who frantically defend themselves, release statement after statement, engage with every critic. They look desperate. Their defensiveness makes the accusation seem more credible, not less. Your silence is often the most powerful defense because it refuses to validate the attack by treating it as if it deserves a response. Protect your peace. Say nothing. Here's what you need to understand about your peace. It's not something you find. It's something you protect. And the primary way you protect it is by refusing to give your energy to people and situations that disturb it. Every time you explain yourself to someone who's already decided to misunderstand you, you're sacrificing your peace. Every time you defend yourself against accusations from people who don't respect you, you're giving away your power. Every time you justify your boundaries to people who've already shown they won't respect them, you're betraying yourself. Your peace is the most valuable thing you have. Guard it ruthlessly. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Your silence is a complete answer. Protect your peace. Say nothing. These aren't just phrases. They're boundaries. They're standards. They're the framework for a life where you stop performing for people who will never applaud, where you stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand, where you stop giving your energy to people who will never value it. And when you implement these boundaries, when you let your silence be your answer, something profound happens. You become free. You've learned when to walk away without a word. You've learned that some people will never understand you, and that's not your problem. You've learned that protecting your peace sometimes means saying absolutely nothing. But all of these lessons, every chapter, every principle, every practice, they've been building toward something. Toward a version of you that doesn't just know these concepts intellectually but embodies them completely. A version of you that can't be shaken, can't be provoked, can't be moved by external chaos. That's not a destination you arrive at. It's an identity you build. Day by day. Choice by choice. Pause by pause. You are not the same person who started this audiobook. Something has shifted. Maybe you can't articulate it yet. Maybe it doesn't feel dramatic. But somewhere between the first chapter and this moment, you began to see yourself differently. You began to understand that emotional restraint isn't weakness, it's the highest form of strength. That silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. That the pause isn't hesitation, it's power. And now the question is, what do you do with this understanding? How do you take these concepts and turn them into identity? How do you become someone who cannot be shaken? Unshakable isn't born, it's built. Let me be clear about what this means. You are not trying to become perfect. You're not trying to never feel emotions. You're not trying to become some stoic robot who's unmoved by everything. That's not the goal. The goal is to become someone whose core, whose sense of self, whose inner peace, whose fundamental stability cannot be disturbed by external chaos. You'll still feel. You'll still care. You'll still be affected by life. But those effects won't reach your foundation. They'll be waves on the surface while your depths remain calm. Here's what living as someone unshakable actually looks like. Someone insults you. You feel the sting. But within seconds, it passes through you. It doesn't lodge itself in your chest. It doesn't replay in your mind for hours. It doesn't shape how you see yourself. You register it, that person tried to hurt me, and then you release it. Because your sense of self isn't built on what others think. It's built on what you know to be true about yourself. And no external opinion can shake that foundation. That's not indifference. That's security. That's being unshakable. You are the calm. Everything else is noise. This is the mantra that defines this way of living. When chaos erupts around you, conflict, criticism, crisis, betrayal, you are the still point. The eye of the storm. Not because nothing affects you, but because you've trained yourself to return to calm. To find your center even when everything is pulling you away from it. People will try to disturb your peace. Situations will try to destabilize you. And you'll acknowledge them, feel them, and then return to calm. Always return to calm. Because calm is who you are now. Everything else is temporary noise. Let me tell you what happened to you over the course of these chapters. You learned that most reactions are unnecessary. That silence intimidates weak people. That your brain hijacks you through biology, not character flaws. That strategic silence wins conflicts. That social media exploits your need to respond. That restraint and passivity are completely different. That detachment doesn't require coldness. That the pause is where all transformation happens. And that some people will never deserve your explanation. Each of those lessons removed a layer of reactivity. Each one gave you back a piece of control you didn't know you'd lost. And now, standing here in the final chapter, you're different. Whether you feel it yet or not. This is who you are now, someone who cannot be moved. Not someone who's never challenged, but someone who's no longer controlled by those challenges. Think about what used to shake you. A critical comment. A difficult conversation. Someone's disappointment. Conflict. Rejection. These things used to derail your entire day. Maybe your entire week. They used to occupy space in your mind rent-free, playing on repeat, disrupting your sleep, affecting your decisions. But you're building something different now. You're building resilience that runs so deep that these things can't reach it. They happen. You feel them. And you remain yourself. Unshaken. Unmoved. Intact. Unshakable isn't born, it's built. Here's how you build it. Every morning, before the world starts making demands, you remind yourself who you are. You're not someone who needs external validation. You're not someone who can be provoked into chaos. You're not someone whose peace is negotiable. This isn't affirmations. This isn't positive thinking. This is conscious identity reinforcement. You're telling your nervous system, your subconscious mind, your entire being, this is who I am today. And then you go out into the world and you prove it. Through your pauses. Through your silence. Through your refusal to be moved by things that used to control you. Here's what this looks like in daily practice. You wake up. Before you check your phone, before you engage with anyone, you take 10 conscious breaths. You ground yourself in your body. You remind yourself, I am calm. I am in control of my responses. I am unshakable. Then you go about your day. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You pause. Breathe. Let it go. Someone criticizes your work. You pause. Assess if there's truth to learn from. If yes, learn. If no, release. Someone tries to provoke you online. You read it. Feel the irritation. And close the app without responding. Each of these moments is practice. Each one reinforces, I am someone who cannot be moved. You are the calm. Everything else is noise. Let's talk about what you'll lose when you become this person. You'll lose the rush of righteous anger, the satisfaction of telling someone off, the temporary relief of venting, the connection that comes from shared outrage, the drama that used to make you feel alive. You'll lose all of that. And you know what you'll gain? Peace. Real, deep, unshakable peace. The kind that lets you sleep through the night even when things are hard. The kind that lets you show up for the people you love without being consumed by chaos. The kind that makes every day feel manageable because your internal state isn't determined by external circumstances. Here's the test. You'll know you're becoming unshakable when your baseline changes. When your normal state is calm and centeredness, not anxiety and reactivity. When something disturbs you, you notice it more clearly because it's a deviation from your norm, not your norm itself. When people comment on how composed you are, not because you're trying to appear composed, but because you genuinely are. When you can be in the middle of chaos, a family crisis, a work disaster, a personal betrayal, and some part of you remains observing, steady, capable of thinking clearly. That's when you know. That's when you've crossed over from practicing these principles to embodying them. This is who you are now, someone who cannot be moved. I want to talk about what this doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you never get hurt. It doesn't mean you never grieve. It doesn't mean you never feel anger or fear or sadness. You're not becoming less human. You're becoming more skillful at being human. You feel everything. But those feelings don't destabilize you. They move through you. They inform you. And then they pass. Like weather. You don't try to stop the rain. But you don't let the rain convince you that you're drowning either. You just note, it's raining. And you continue being yourself. Unshakable isn't born, it's built. Here's the daily practice that makes this permanent. Every night before sleep, review your day. Identify 3 moments where you could have reacted but didn't. 3 moments where you paused. 3 moments where you chose calm over chaos. Replay them. Feel the satisfaction of having maintained control. This isn't ego. This is reinforcement.